Hello, welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationships podcast. I'm Natalie Roberts and I'm here with my co-host, Heather Parks. We've both been in our neurodiverse relationships and families for more than 25 years. We met 10 years ago when we were feeling really desperate and trying to solve a lot of issues in our relationship and our families. We've been journeying since then. We've found many more positive and hopeful ways to solve, resolve, repair, reconnect in those relationships and in our families, in our lives. And we now co-host also Loving Difference online, giving hope and a way forward for neurodiverse relationships. In this podcast, though, we're busting the myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started this journey, that we've realised aren't true, and that actually were preventing us from recovering and having the relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. So we want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation. See you there.
Welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationship podcast. If you've listened before, feel free to skip these intros. And if you're new to the podcast, a warm welcome. If you like what you hear, please follow and subscribe to be notified of our new episodes. I'm Heather Parks. I've been in a neurodiverse relationship with my husband, Phil, for 25 years, and we have 4 children. All of us have had struggles and challenges, particularly when neurodiversity was unknown. I discovered new ways of navigating difference so that I can be true to myself and thrive in my neurodiverse family. I'm now an accredited somatic coach and nervous system educator, helping others to heal so they can be the best versions of themselves and thrive too.
Hi, I'm Natalie Roberts. I've been in a neurodiverse relationship and family with my husband, Pete, for 25 years. We discovered neurodiversity was a part of our story back in 2014 when we were really struggling as a couple and family. Now we're thriving and enjoying life in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. I'm also an accredited relationship coach, supporting individuals in neurodiverse relationships to reverse the impact of unknown neurodiversity and thrive in a relationship and a life that they dream of.
Since we met 9 years ago, we've reversed the impact of unknown neurodiversity and found ways to resolve complex, everyday relationship and family challenges without our partners involved. We want you to know that you can change your whole experience by focusing on yourself and without needing to change anyone else. We also realise that this journey is about so much more than new or more knowledge.
So in 2020, we created Loving Difference, the kind of online community we'd have loved to have found when we were new to it all and struggling. And together, we now also host an online programme with a map, empowering resources, tools, and all the support that you need to recover yourself, create sustainable change, and be you in your relationship and your life. Loving Difference and the programme we host there are for everyone, whatever your neuroidentity. What we all have in common is wanting new ways to thrive in our neurodiverse relationships. You can find out more at Loving Difference, www.lovingdifference.net. In this podcast, we're busting the myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started the journey, that we've realised aren't true, and that were preventing us from recovering and having relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. So we want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change. So in today's episode, coming back to that hope word, we're busting the myth that it's too dangerous to hope in my neurodiverse relationship. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation.
And it's perfect, isn't it, for today? Because
Yes.
we've just come out of a week together. Our brains are kind of like a little bit fried because we've done like loads and we've had like really fantastic, exciting conversations. But actually what we're noticing is that we're feeling so full of hope. We've got all that energy, haven't we, from that belief and excitement and anticipation and sort of finding new ways forward and feeling like they're actionable and we can do it and we've got agency and all these things that we're noticing that at some points in our lives when things were really hard and we were exhausted and it felt impossible, that it just evaporated. And you remember, we were just sort of remembering some of that, weren't we? And we've had a message and a very similar message to that from one of our members. Would you like to just read that out?
Yeah, I will read it out. But I was just noticing, even in when you were sharing there, how different your energy was when you were talking about being in the hope, and then when we're talking about, oh, and we know that like sometimes we've like lost that, like you just went right down. Like I can remember, and I was like, oh, God, I can remember feeling like that. So yeah, we've had a comment from a member who says it's so encouraging to read from people probably with similar first-hand experience about fears and doubts, and then about hope, because hope is something I try to let go of in recent years because I experienced so many setbacks and one-way streets. It felt counterproductive to try and keep it alive. And I think it's just, I guess we read that message, and it's great. They're feeling encouraged and finding hope in loving difference. But it helped us to kind of think back and wonder back in our own memories to where we were feeling the same. So do you want to share a bit more, Heather, about what you can remember?
Sure. I mean, I really remember sort of when neurodiversity sort of arrived as part of our story, it was a real mixture of hope and hopelessness, because initially it was kind of like, oh, I get it. This is what it's all about. This is the explanation. I'm sure there are just strategies. I'm sure that if I learn more, read more, do more. So in a way, it came with some hope. And then I kind of remember almost instantaneously that kind of hope evaporating, and more so as I tried more and more things and it didn't work. But almost also an instant kind of like, oh, but some of this then, in my belief system at the time, and it's not what I believe now, but was that some of this was very fixed then. So what had been keeping my hope going beforehand was that, oh, I think it's because, we're struggling with young children, we're struggling with, setting up our own business, there was all these other things. And I was doing, and we'll be happy when. So I was doing that very much like, oh, when all of this is sorted out, we'll be okay. And then suddenly it was like, oh, but if this thing is fixed and can't be changed, and it even when all of these other things are kind of resolved, therefore, am I still not going to be happy? So at that point, hope just seemed to just completely evaporate. But do you relate to kind of a similar thought process?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking there, just as you were talking about that idea that, again, the hope that things can change. And I think I remember definitely the same feelings of suddenly a renewed hope of finding neurodiversity, because I think we'd been around the loops on various other ways of trying to sort it out or try and figure out what else was going on. I'd also done various things myself to try and, I don't know, get through it, I guess you could say, which had got me so far. So I think there was renewed hope in finding neurodiversity, and then tried all sorts of strategies that primarily, well, I was reading about or finding primarily, and those not really working, or certainly not giving me the experience that I was expecting or needing or wanting those strategies, well, I guess, to fulfill the hope. They weren't fulfilling the hope. And therefore, I think the hope just gradually gets more and more chipped away. I also realized, looking back now, that we use up a lot of energy on all of these different things we're trying. And so we're also running out of the fuel, like the juice. So I think you've got the hope going down, and the energy required to keep trying to change what's also going down, and will have been going down in all the years before. It's like, I think you run on some adrenaline as soon as you get another, oh, okay, maybe it's this. And then you kind of use it all up again. And then your hope goes up. And then as the energy comes down, the hope goes down. So I think that there's all different ingredients, I think, going on. And and also trusting people. So I was trusting professionals, trusting authors of books, trusting lots of places that they had answers, and then realizing, well, they're not working. So is that down to me? Is it down to Pete? Is it down to us? Is it down to, I never really questioned the professionals, I have to say. But even with that, it was like, okay, well, those don't work for us then. Like, then I think we're just in a place then of despair again. I mean, which is the counter to hope is despair. So I think there's a pendulum that must go on then between, as your hope goes, you're arriving in despair. So I think there is a question of how, even in this episode, can we shed some light on what hope is and what we've been learning about it, and what story we have about hope that maybe can support others who are feeling hopeless, which would be despair, into or towards the possibility that they could hope. And I think one of the things I experience a lot with clients, and we've experienced it too in Love Indifference, is that people do arrive hopeless, and also they've often trusted and lost trust in a lot of other places, so they don't necessarily trust us either. You know, we're just another people with some ideas and some solutions that apparently have worked for us, but there's not necessarily, I don't think you just immediately jump to hope when you've had it quashed a lot of times. And so we often say, you know, we'll carry that for you. You know, we'll carry the hope for you. We believe that things can change for you. We believe in the ways that we found. And so we will carry that, I guess, even through this episode. Let us carry that hope. We're very enthusiastic, which I think is an ingredient of hope too. And we'll put that in our pocket for you. I always sort of say, I've got a stone with your name on, a hope stone, put it in my pocket, and I'll carry that while you're not really wanting to trust hope or entertain the possibility of it again, because I understand that, like, we've been there. I know that it's not a matter of just suddenly being hopeful when you've thought that, like, as this person's saying, it's too dangerous
because with hope comes, you know, when hope doesn't come to fruition, it comes with a lot of pain and a lot of disappointment, and those are like, for certainly disappointment for me is like, oh, it's a tricky emotion to navigate, and it doesn't feel nice. So why set yourself up for all of that? You know, why have more pain when you're just, you know, when time and time again it's proved so challenging. And I think, you know, it brings us really back to our sort of home and our purpose. You know, we talk a lot in Love Indifference about, you know, finding your bigger purpose to help with motivation, don't you? And for us, it's always been about trying to share or bring back some hope that we have for all our listeners and our members and those journeying with us, that things absolutely can change and you can have a better experience. And so it's lovely to kind of be exploring that on the back of our week together, particularly when we're kind of, you know, so because it does feel like a little bit of a homecoming to me, that, you know, this is really core to us, isn't it? It's really part of our soul. And I love also what you were saying, because you brought in a lot about the relationship with hope and trust, and all of those things that have evaporated as well. Capacity, you talked about, like, we don't have enough energy, we're too tired, you know, it keeps everything we keep trying to keep draining, doesn't it? So all of these things, and you know, we know that there are a lot of ingredients to hope. Again,
it's a like little word, but
there's so many parts.
And we don't want to make it complex or too complicated, but it's just it's good to unpack it, like see it like a present that we've kind of said, oh, not doing that anymore, like shut that away, but let's take the wrapping off it. Let's have a little more of a look at what hope is, how it works. And because then we might be able to think whether we could just, we always talk about turning our toes, like, could we just turn our toes towards it or back towards it a little bit more, not jump all in again, because it just feels too much. So I think, with that, so let's explore that a little bit more today. You found a great definition. So you found a definition of hope. Do you want to share that? Let's start with that.
Yeah, definitely found a few, actually. So I quite like this one, this idea. It's like to cherish a desire with anticipation. So it's like, you know, there's some kind of desire, expectations that a particular thing is going to happen, you know, and it's, I think one of the things that was quite important, I think I sort of looked at, is that hope is not, unlike trust, which is very much based on sort of kind of finding some reliability or confidence in either in ourselves or another person. It's a lot less tangible, I guess, than that. It's much more of a feelingy thing. And I think that's key, because actually you can create that, you know, if you've got the right ingredients. I do believe that we can recreate what might have been lost. So I liked those as well. And
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I found one from Helen Keller, which is, I think, slightly more challenging to kind of buy into, but I also think it's really helpful. So Helen Keller said, hope sees the invisible, which I guess all of these things are going to be an irony actually as I read it. So let's just say it. Hope sees the invisible, feels the intangible, and achieves the impossible.
Nice.
Which are all counterproductive to each other. Like, you can't see the invisible, you can't feel the intangible, and you can't achieve, like, if it's impossible, that kind of doesn't work, does it? So that already tells us that it's a sort of, it is a sort of quite an abstract thing that we're talking about, I think, and yet it's something that I think I pin all my hopes on something. It is, we get very attached, I think, to what it is that we're thinking hope will deliver, I think. So there's a lot of attachment we probably have with it. And what Helen's saying is, actually, this is about what energy, like hope is an energy, maybe, like what's that energy that I move into unknown with, into intangible with, or, you know, it's quite a different thing actually in some ways, I suppose. But it is to potentially, I think that's quite challenging.
I think it is. And I think what it needs is belief. And some time, I mean, when we were having some downtime last night, didn't we? We did a bit more binge watching. We love Ted Lasso, don't we? And, you know, believe is that word that's there with hope and against the impossible, and that feels really like, you know, all that goosebumpy stuff. And we do need all of that, and it's sort of like, you know, we need that optimism, we need the excitement, we need the energy, we need desire, we need purpose, all of those things. And many of our members arrive without any of those things. And like you say, that's what we're here for, isn't it? That's what we think we can give all of that. We've got loads of it.
We've got loads of it. I've got loads of it this week. I was reading an article recently which is nothing to do with neurodiversity, and I do this quite often where I'm reading something totally unrelated and somewhere else, and I kind of can see all of, like, kind of how it's exactly the same as neurodiverse relationships. And it was an article all about climate change and about the somebody has done some research on how people, particularly young people, are feeling and experiencing climate change, and realizing that you know, there's a lot of despair. There's a lot of despair, particularly in young people, about whether this can even be overcome. They just don't really have a lot of hope of whether that can really happen. And what they were noticing was that in the research, that it showed that most people, almost 2/3 of the people that they asked, felt that the media talked more about the problems caused by climate change than it talked about the solutions to it.
Interesting.
And unsurprisingly, it says 4/5 of those people want to hear the solution story too. And it made me think that, okay, that is interesting, because I think, again, out in neurodiversity spaces, wherever we might be hanging out, trying to either find some answers, or to hear from other people who are in the same situation as us, or it can often, I just remember back, and after the initial hope, I think, that there was from finding it, didn't take long before I started to feel fairly hopeless about it all again. And I think it was because I was mainly hearing pretty negative, hopeless accounts from people that hadn't been able to find a way to make it any better, from people that were deciding to stay in it, in their relationship, but they weren't really very satisfied by that situation. A lot of focus on the challenges and how difficult and everything is, and that just felt like not a great long-term prospect to me. And I think that started to really chip away at hope. Again, what I would want to be happening, or the experience I would like to be having, just was getting shut down, I think, in those situations.
I remember the same. I remember exactly that process as well. And I think for me, I know that a lot of that was because I was so focused on someone else doing something or being different or changing, that I was just giving away all of my agency and all of my hope, because all my hope was going into somebody else who actually at the time had zero capacity or energy, and was only in survival mode, and so therefore it was like, yeah, but I didn't ever sort of turn it around and look at myself and look about what I could do differently, or what I was in all of this. And I think,
well, there wasn't really any, I don't
different,
think there really
it?
was anything much that was talking about what we could do on our own to resolve things, or either resolve things or to feel better about ourselves in it, or just feel happier, reconnect with ourselves, or get our own health and well-being back to some sort of state. I also think a lot of it was, and often still is, focused on sorting these issues out as a couple. And if your partner is not interested or wanting to be engaged in that process, then it felt, again, there didn't really feel like there was a way forward for that. So it did feel very,
I think it's really important
fatalistic.
just to remind our listeners, because there might be some new listeners here today, that we've created change in our neurodiverse relationship without our partners joining in on the work towards that, haven't we?
Yeah, without needing to. Yeah, without us needing to change
a solo journey, hasn't it? It hasn't been a solo journey, because we've supported each other, and we have other people as well on this path and doing similar work. But it hasn't been. We have experienced some psychotherapy years back. It was total disaster. It was just going through the motions, and then afterwards, and made everything worse. So that was like a never again. That was completely off-putting. We didn't understand neurodiversity at the time. The therapist didn't understand neurodiversity. It was a disaster. So since then, my partner's attention hasn't been on any of this. This has just been us, and that's been the same for you, isn't it? And many of our members, we recognize that there's such a need for that, where because there are some couples therapy with people who are more informed of neurodiversity, but that still doesn't help those of us who are on our own with it.
On our own, and it doesn't mean that that there isn't improvement within the relationship. It's important to kind of state that in terms of all of this. There is we've experienced huge shifts in the relationship, but it hasn't, but we've just been focused on ourselves. That's the main thing that we always say. So so it was interesting to read this research, and one of the things that I circled it in this article, because what it said was that hope and optimism are prerequisites for motivation to change anything. And I read it and thought, oh wow, that's so. If you've lost hope and you're not optimistic and you're not hearing the solutions, which is what this was saying about climate change, then the motivations to change anything, so even for young people or people to engage in any of the things that could help the climate change or help support the planet or support nature in even any small way, they don't, it's not really going to happen. There's no motivation.
It's like, what's the point? It's like, what's the point? It's too big.
This is pointless.
It's too big. It's too hard. What difference can I make? I'm nothing in it, in the whole big thing. Which I think is exactly sometimes what we feel in our situations, isn't it?
Exactly. Like I literally read
what's
it.
the point of me doing all this work? What's the point of me doing all this work if my partner isn't? What's the point of me doing all of this if why do I have to, that's a
why do I have to recycle everything if the politicians aren't sorting out fossil fuels? Or what's the point in me, not buying fast fashion if the fast fashion thing is not sorting itself out? What's the point kind of thing, isn't it? And just not really having hope that it's of any relevance or any benefit. So
it feels like we're not making any difference, or we're not having an impact, or it's not going to make, it's just, so we totally get that in some of our, even when people come in and they're trying to decide whether to come into our program, they're like, these are some of the things that they're coming up against, because they are in that place, aren't they, where there doesn't seem to be any solution or hope or all of these things.
It's almost a dare. I think it's dare I pick up any hope again when it's been dangerous before. That's a really challenging thing, I think. So it does say then that we do first have to believe that we can change something about it. We have to believe that something we would do would be something that would be contributing to improvements in nature or something. So we have to believe something about it. And it talks about then we have to become enthralled by what's possible. We have to be somehow gripped by the process of making it happen. And I think that, I guess sometimes I just, even if we can convey or pass on, we always talk about passing on the sparkle, but like passing on some of the hope that we have, not only for ourselves as we continue this journey ourselves, but the hope we have for every single individual, that they can change their whole experience without needing to change anyone else, that they can find more belief in themselves, they can reconnect with themselves, they can step by step their way through the challenges in their relationship in order to decide whether this is the relationship for me or not, and that all those can be supported, so that I think the hope you start carrying is that I can have a better experience of myself and life, and I will look at where my relationship features in that. And I think that's maybe a different direction to take hope in. I don't know. I think that's more the hope we continue to carry, is that I still very much hope and believe, like we're saying, that I can change. And I guess I have the proof of it now. So we need to be sharing. That's what we hope that we can share the proof of it, that they don't have for their own relationship or for themselves, but hopefully you can see in other people. That's why people that are making a massive difference in any kind of nature situation or anything that's related to climate change, if we can start to see the solutions. So this article was going on to say we need to be sharing more about the solutions, and not like it should be 80% solutions and 20% the problems, maybe, rather than 80% the problems and 10 or 20% of the solutions. So that's why we're always trying to focus on the solutions.
And then we'll get that hope back, because we will then kind of see that we've got some agencies, we've got some autonomy, we've got some choices, isn't it? We really do help our members shift back into this feeling of having some choice or having agency, whereas that often come in, but that I have no choices, I have none of that, it's all that's also evaporated. And I think that's very connected to hope, isn't it? Because if you don't feel like you have any of that, it's not going to go on. So I think it's massive, isn't it? And it's really exciting as well, and we love to share it, and we're happy to carry it for you. I think that's a really important message. If you feel like you can't get it yourself, just come and join us, and we've got it in buckets.
Absolutely. And the article kind of finishes off with seeing the problems and responding with excitement to the solutions. And I think that's, I've sometimes in the past felt like I shouldn't get too excited about the solutions, because people back there are feeling so, horrendously hopeless about it. But I think the fact is we are very excited about the solutions. We're living those solutions. We're continuing to discover more in where we're at currently with our relationships and with our family. And it in here it's sorting about we need to launch into an obsession with solutions. So I'm kind of going to be like not apologetic, I think, about us being obsessed with solutions that we really stand behind, and that we're really passionate about, and just like slot that into the despair that might be floating around, and hope that that's going to be land better with people. So fantastic. So with all that in mind, then the truth that we've realized is that hope, when we combine that with agency and energy, does create the motivation to keep going in our quest to have a better experience in our neurodiverse relationships.
Amazing. Love it. If this episode has resonated with you, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching to get notifications of future episodes. To dive deeper into all of this with professional coaching, resources, and all the support you need, join us in Love Indifference via www.loveindifference.net. And we'll be back here soon.